Okay, we're on the second video and we're gonna see the advanced material editor. So I'm gonna right click and edit material, and here we have the advanced material editor. So the advanced material editor contains more options and more tabs, and the UI is much more dense than the basic material. And this is just tells us how much the materials in Vue are parameterable and tweakable, and you can create any kind of material you want. So let's get started with these little buttons here. Actually, they give you the ability to change the interaction of your material with your environment. So for example, here you can ignore the indirect lighting, here disable acoustics, and here the lightning, ignore lightning, and here ignore atmosphere if you want your object, for example, if you have some chrome material or something and it's reflected in your atmosphere, you can, for example, here ignore the atmosphere and will no longer reflect it. Here we have the generate shadow or casting shadows. So if you click on this button, it will no more cast shadows. We have receive shadows or only shadows. This means that I will delete the material and just let your shadow, for example, I don't know, if you want to create some ghosts or something, and even if ghosts don't generate shadow, but depending on what you want. Okay, some invisible persons, I don't know. Okay, here you have showing timeline. So if you have an animated material, stopping the animation or deleting the animation, and here you have animate material surface. Okay, so here you have the type of material, mixed and volumetric material. For example, when you create some fire, we're gonna see this later on, and we have the ecosystem that we already seen before. Okay, here we have some effects like TAA boost and separate quality drop. This will be seen in the upcoming part. And here we have the mapping, as we've seen with the basic material editor. So here we have multiple tabs, so seven tabs, and in the first one, which is the color in the alpha, we'll have the ability to choose our coloring mode. Here we have the mapped picture, and here we have the procedural picture. So for color, sorry, for mapped picture, you're gonna have to use the function editor, or simply double click and take one of your textures to apply it directly to material. For example, if I just edited the function, you can see that automatically it added our texture here. Okay, so pretty basic. Here we have the color blend. If you want to blend your color with your texture with some color, for example, if I wanted a brighter texture, maybe, or yellowish brighter texture, I could choose this color here and try to blend here my image, and as you can see, it's getting yellowish. And here we have color mask, so we will blend your texture with the color, and your texture blend your color with the texture and not the texture with the color. Okay, so it's like the invert option. Here we have to correct the gamma, and here to invert the colors. The interpolation type, for example, for close-in, close-up renderings, you can lose in quality when using some textures, small textures or low quality textures. You can use the interpolation type to add a bit of quality and a bit of details. So the bilinear is an interpolation between two pixels. The normalized is the values proportional to the distance between the corner of two pixels, and bicubic it's also like bilinear, but it's a continuous variable. Okay. We have the image scale, so you can change the scale of your image if you want more tile it or something. We have the image offset. This pretty basic and self-explained. We have the over color or the color correction. If I want something more yellow, okay, just click here and it will automatically color correct. Okay, so I'm gonna reset this. I'm gonna take it a bit darker, so we have a better coloring here. Okay, so next we have the mapping. This is pretty much for your objects. Okay, so automatic generally will do the trick, but if you have some spherical here, for example, working, but if I change to cylindrical, you'll see that our texture mapping has changed. This depending on your object actually, but automatic generally do the trick. And here we have the tiling, yeah, to repeat the texture or to mirror it, but this is more visible when using a flat surface or a plane. Next we're gonna move on bumps, or just I'm gonna take a look at procedural colors. So procedural colors are generally mathematical functions used to generate colors and ambience. For example, you can double click and load one of these hair color productions. If you choose one of these, okay, so if you want and if you don't like these presets, you can simply right click and edit function, so delete these and simply create a color map and then connect it to the color output and choose one of these types like two color variation, generate some variation in the color. For example, you can, for creating something very odd or like this, you can see that we have this, and you can play with the settings to create something pretty much different or unnatural, if I could say. So here it is, so it's a mathematical generated color, and you can use an image or edit your function, this depending on your needs. Okay, so next you have the bumps. So as I explained later previously, bump, it will fake some relief, but also we have the displacement mapping. So here I'm gonna rapidly move to mapped picture to avoid doing some function editing, sorry, and I will automatically load an image. Okay, load an image to create bump. So sorry, no, the edit function, and I'm gonna just come over here and do a copy paste, and then I'm gonna load another image. So double click here or just click here and then on this little arrow, and I'll choose this one here. So this is my bump map, and I will connect it and use it as grayscale output. And here you can define the scale, the origin, the interpolation, and the tiling. These are pretty self-explained. And let's take a look to our image. So let's render, and you can see this effect or this relief which is being created by the bump actually, but our sphere is still spherical. So if you take a look at the edges here, you can see that it's sharp. So what the displacement mapping, if we activate it, will not only create a leaf, but will also generate geometry depending on our map. So if I just click on displacement, you can see here these waves, or if I could hollow here, and this is due to the displacement mapping. And let's just do a quicker preview, and as you can see, we have a better result than using a bump. So we have really truly generated geometry. And you can also play with the depth here if you want to reduce the bump, or for example 0.05. It will also interact with the displacement. So here you have in the displacement mapping, you have the smoothing, which will make your generated geometry more smoother, and you have the quality boost. So I'm gonna pick this one to like +4, and the smoothing to like 25%. Okay, and let's generate. And as you can see, we have a very nice result of relief and depth. You can also use a normal map, so you can import your normal map. And so, so here it says to me that my object does not have UV coordinates, okay, but you can also use how can you say, generate the UV coordinates of your object and then import your normal map. Okay, so this is pretty simple. So typically a primitive has no UV coordinates, so here I think we can really use it. But if you have some complex object or like a mountain, I think it will do the trick. Here we have some pretty simple to understand settings. Here we have the force extension and the move ecosystem instances when doing displacement. So I'm gonna just take back this to like 0. We have re-evaluate material distribution after displacement, so add bump mapping to display surface, etc. These are pretty self-explained. And you also have dependent on slope. For example, I use this when creating rocky mountains, as we've seen in the third day with the function. So in the slope I want to have rocks, etc., so I'm using displacement, and the higher altitudes we have snow, so no need for this displacement there. Okay, so I'm gonna move to highlights. So what's highlights? As I explained before, it's the beam on your generated by, it's the reflection of light on your material. For example, here it's white, so I'm gonna just get a bit high the highlight global intensity, and as you can see we have this effect here on the material. You can change the size by making it smaller for a very shiny object as some metals or something, or just dull for some other materials. So just play with these. Here I want to have some wet bricks here, as you can see a bit more here, and we have some anisotropic highlighting, which will stretch your highlights like this, as we can see in some brushed metals or so. Okay, so pretty simple here. You can also use variable highlights, so you can drive this by a function here, or just using some maps. Okay, this depending on your needs. And next we have transparency. So just do a quick render to see how the highlights affects our material. Okay, as you can see we have this wet plastic effect. Okay, next we have the transparency. So transparency, I think it's clear. So here you have the global, so how much transparent will be the material. So 100% it will completely disappear, and 0% no rays will pass through our object. So we can also activate, if we have some transparency there, we can activate the blurred transparencies if you want to blur your background or what we can see behind the object. We have the refraction index. For example, if you have some reflection here or some transparency here, you can play with the reflection index. For example, water have a refraction index of 1.32. So here you can see the deformation of our background, and just to make it more I'm gonna reset this function here to make it more reset this one more visible. I won't use a very basic material here, and as you can see, the more I get the refraction index, the more our background or what we can see through our object will be distorted. So we're gonna use like 1.52, which is the index of refraction for glass. Okay, and as you can see, it will completely distort our object. Here we have some blurred transparency, so this why. But as you can see, very nice results in really no time. So here have some, if you want to blur it, but remember that blurred transparencies will get high in rendering time, will raise up your rendering times, so be aware of this. And you can see it's pretty good uh, for 10 minutes material or so. As you can see, this is, I think, the power of Vue, which is the ease of use. Okay, so something like this it would be nice just to see the other options here. We have flare. So flare is, let me explain. For example, if you take a look from behind at a transparent object, some spots or some parts can be very bright. So this is what's flare. It is what is highlight to it is to transparency what is highlights to reflection. Okay, so you can experiment with this, but it's really simple. Next you have fuzzy. So what is fuzzy? It's like feather. So you'll feather your material. For example, if I take higher value, you can see that our material is starting to disappear. For creating, for example, I don't know, a ghost material or so, it will be very useful. So I'm not stop. Okay, I'm not deactivate it. Now we have additive, so we will blend your material with the scene. Quick render, as you can see. We have variable transparency, so you can drive your transparency with a function. As you can see, it's pretty powerful. Now we have the fading out. So how the material will fade out. So let's, for example, get higher value, and as you can see, it fades out into a blue. Okay, here, for example. And the more transparent, I think, the more the fading out will be visible. Okay, so let's get a transparent, more transparent, not so much, but like this. And here we have clear or murky. Okay, so as you can see, if you get a bit of our reflection here, of our refraction index, you can see that how it does actually work. Okay, so we have the fade out color. You can choose any color. So it's the exit color, if I could say. The light is passing through the object, and when it exits, it get this color here. In a more accurate description, I'll say, if you take a light and if you take C and light going illuminating the sea, you'll see that the sea is always blue. Why? Because the more depth, the more the more the sea level is far from the ground, the more light beams will fade out and does not go until the ground, and this is why you see the sea always blue. Okay, so I hope you really understand, because it's a pretty good option for creating water, especially or a colored glass. Okay, so you can play with these settings here, and we have the light color. If you change it, if I change it like something yellowish, I hope it will be more visible. Okay, or something like this. Okay, now I'll show you to explain what's light color. It's the exit color, actually. It's the color of light, or what the material take. I'll just explain, it will be better. So I'm gonna go to my top view and place this sphere just behind. Okay, and scale it a bit just to see. Here I want to, okay, pretty good. Now I'm not go back to highlights, enable transparency. I didn't save the material. I'm gonna stay on the CG dots colors. Okay, I want something pretty much murky. Okay, and I want a fading color, something like this. Okay, and let's take a look on the preview. Okay, so and let's do a render, a quick render. And oh, sorry, I did a mistake actually. I'm gonna copy my material, and yeah, here it is. Okay, I want it to be more. Why it didn't do the trick? But well, what I want to say is that I don't know why it's doing this, but I'm gonna copy this material and paste it to sphere 2 and see actually if this now works or not. Let's maybe get higher in transparency. Yeah, actually we can't really. For example, I'm gonna illustrate this by an example because I don't really have succeeded in my creation here. But for example, if you have sea and ground which is pretty near the sea level, you see that the color of the water is being change it to like green, and this is what is the light color. For example, if I place a sphere behind or something behind my object here, even if my object is being blue, purple, the exit color will be green. Okay, so objects placed behind a transparent material receive light of a color depending on the distance traveled through this transparent material, if I could say. And as light travels further through the material, it takes on particular color that can be defined here by the light color. Okay, and for example, this is how, as I said before, with the light, with the sea and the ground, you make blue water look green when the sands or your ground gets close to the surface. I think it's more clear now. So I really failed my example, but it's alright. Now I think with water material it would work, but here it's right now it's not the result expected. Okay, so it doesn't matter, and let's continue on. So I'm gonna take my sphere again and go to the material editor, and now let's go to reflections. So reflections are pretty easy, and I want really to lose time explaining this. We have the global reflectivity and the blur reflection. This is as simple as this. Okay, for if you want something reflective, real refractive like chrome, you can just put it to like 100, and something less reflective, you can use the global reflectivity as 40%, for example, and blurred reflection or not. This is depending on your needs. Also, you can play with the highlights here. I'm gonna put it to like white, and actually we have here very shiny object. Okay, and if you want to add some anisotropy like this, okay, and do test render here. As you can see, it's reflecting slightly our background or our scene, but if I get it to higher value, you can see that it's completely reflecting, and we have a nice result of blurred and anisotropy here, because blurred reflection are generally coupled with anisotropy. Okay, so back to reflection 0. Okay, so right now you can also use variable reflectivity map. For example, I'm not just take something like this, not like this because it's not a sphere, or something like this, and just get the scale down to like 0.5 for every axis. Okay, and you can choose also a filter, but it's alright. And if I do test here, you can see that at some parts it's reflective and at the other it's not. So you can use this also to drive your reflections. Also you can use a reflection map if you want to, but variable reflectivity will do the trick. Now we have translucency. So what's translucency? Actually, if you put your finger on a light source, the source of light, you can see that it takes this color, and you can see like the light traveling into your finger. But in a more technical way, the light when used with some standard materials will be diffused, reflected, refracted or something, but with translucency or translucent material, you get it, the light will be also absorbed and scattered. I can illustrate my explanation with this shimmy here. You have the incident light, which is coming from a surface or from a source light, and here we have the surface of the material. So here the light is reflected, then it's diffused and reflected, but also refracted and absorbed. And as you can see, while it's been absorbed, it also been scattered all around this, inside the material, if I could say. Okay, so it is also known as the subsurface scattering. Okay, so maybe you know it in this name, the SSS. Okay, or the triple S, depending on how you like to call it. So enable subsurface scattering, and it's very tricky. Okay, so you have to define the average depth, okay, of the translucency. Okay, a short depth will make more short, the more translucent will be your material. Actually, in a realistic way, translucency works in millimeters or just centimeters, because for example, you can really have a translucent object which got a depth of like 100 meter. Okay, so generally it plays about meters and centimeters. Okay, so here you have the balance between absorption and multiple. So multiple will scatter, will reflect, diffuse, refract, and scatter your light beams. But when absorption will be more absorbed light, as you can see just here. A little bit in the preview, it's if you I think it's not really visible, but here a bit you can see here a bit. But alright, you have the refraction index. Okay, if you get it like to like one, and overall effect quality. Okay, here this is the quality. The absorption, if you want it to be like backward or forward. You have the filter color, so I'm gonna just put a colored filter like, I don't know, something like this. Okay, so you can see here how it acts, and you can play with the anisotropy if you want to. Absorption, anisotropy, the multiple scattering, the filter color. Okay, for example, if I blue, how the light will be scattered, which color will be scattered. Thin surface here, to if you want to use an infinite thin surface. Okay, so here is our model. So I don't know if we run there will be. I think it's not quite visible. Maybe I'll add a light here just to see, but it's pretty tricky to use this type of material. But maybe here we can show, go top view and easily move. I think you can really, yeah, as you can see here we have the little bit of yellow that we get with the color we used in our absorption filter color. But okay, so I'm gonna reset these two here. Okay, and let's move on effects. So I'm gonna deactivate subsurface scattering, go to effects. So in effects we have some parameters, okay, so you can play with. They are pretty much self-explained. Core reflected light, so this is they are very simple to use. Okay, so we have, I want just to point you to the glowing material. It's an effect that will be added as a post-prod. For example, I'm now take the intensity high and the radius pretty much down. Okay, so we can see, as you can see, we have this glow effect, and I'm click OK, and I'll delete this point light and render, and we have to wait till the render ends. And as you can see, it's rendering without the glow right now, and as it ends the glow is being added, as you can see over here. So it's a post-prod effect. I think we covered pretty much everything of the advanced material editor, and as you've seen, as you saw, it's very easy, and it's very complete, so you can modify everything of your material, every little aspect, going from color to translucency and adding some effects. Okay, so the next step will be the mixed material, so see you later on.